My name is Brenda Dunn, and for 28 years, I served as the laboratory manager of the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, or P.E.A.R. program at Princeton University. I worked with Professor Robert John, who spent 15 years as Dean of the School of Engineering. He was an aerospace scientist. He had become interested in looking at human-machine anomalies, and he was able to get funding for it from a colleague of his in the aerospace business, James McDonnell, who was the patriarch of McDonnell Aircraft Company. He felt that it was important from an aerospace point of view to understand this because there were so-called gremlins that were observed sometimes in aircraft under very tense emotional situations. And he thought we needed to understand it. He told Bob, if you set up a program at Princeton, I'll fund it. And then when Bob and I met at a conference where I was giving a talk about my remote viewing work, he told me he was setting up a program, asked me if I'd be interested in working with him, and I said, I sure would. So anyway, that's how we started. This was back in 1979. People came in and always looked surprised to find this in the engineering school. We had three main portions. One of them was a series of experiments in what we called human-machine anomalies. These were function sort of like coin flipping. You know, if you flip a coin, you have a 50-50 chance of a head or a tail. In these experiments, you had a 50-50 chance of a 1 or a 0, or a ball that bounced to the left or to the right. And people would just try to get more 1s or more 0s, or just let the machine run in a control condition without thinking anything. So the primary variable that we studied in these experiments was human intention. And the intentions were recorded ahead of time, both in a computer file and in a logbook. All of the devices were very carefully calibrated, so we knew that we were dealing with processes that were reliable, that left to themselves would produce a random output. The idea was we would just tell people, try to get the mean high or the mean low. It was a statistical process, but over many hundreds or thousands or indeed millions of binary events, you could get a distribution output, and you could see that the mean of that distribution was ever so slightly shifted, correlated with the intentions that people had determined.
Out of this prodigious database, the results are incontrovertible. There are correlations of the output of these machines with the pre-stated intentions of their operators that far exceed any chance expectations.
A very tiny effect, but over many millions of trials, a highly significant effect that could not occur by chance. Particularly if the mean is going this way when people want it to go that way, and going this way when they want it to go this way, there's no way that you can explain that otherwise. It's also important to point out that when we talk to our participants, they frequently would tell us, you know, there's more to having an intention to make this work. I have to have an emotional connection with the process. I have to feel like the machine is an extension of myself. I have to develop a relationship with the device that is meaningful. It's more than just intention. We realized very early on that although we thought we were studying, or we had set out to study, the effect or the vulnerability of engineering systems, we realized that we were looking at something far more profound. We were looking at how can consciousness, how can non-sensory intention have a tangible and measurable effect on a physical system. The second part of our program was a body of research in remote viewing. The third part of the program was our attempt to try to figure out what was going on, because it was clear that these phenomena could not be explained by any known model or concept.
For millennia, there has been an empirical presumption that human desire has something to do with the way the world works. And there was the intriguing possibility that we were actually going to be able to demonstrate that that was true. and demonstrated on a laboratory bench in an experiment involving incontrovertible electronic equipment, protocols, and data processing.
We were very, very careful. All of the devices were very carefully calibrated to be sure that they were not subject to any kind of artifact, temperature, vibrations, air pressure, whatever it may be. But most importantly, the experiments we did consisted of very large databases.
The data are very convincing indeed. We have been involved in every stage of the experiment, from the design through the operator producing data to the analysis, and we can therefore know literally that there have not been mistakes made, that there can be no fraudulent activity, and so on. For the data to show that there is an effect, the question becomes, where does it come from? How does it work?
The effect persists despite 12 years of examining and trying to rule out every conventional artifact that we, or for that matter, anybody who communicates with us, has been able to propose. That's a lot of thought and effort gone into ruling out conventional causes.
The quantum mechanics principles even acknowledge that observation is an important part of the construction of reality.
We are a long way from full understanding of the nature of these phenomena. Our best guess at this point is that under certain circumstances, there is a resonance between the information processor that's in the device and the information processor that we carry in our minds. That somehow at the level of information, there is a sharing that is accountable for these anomalous effects. That's not overturning all of science, that is expanding it. We are asking for another expansion of the scientific model to accommodate the role of consciousness in the way the world works.
There's a lot of evidence that consciousness is not over just because the body is. And there's no way you're going to convince people who are skeptical of it, and I don't feel the need to try to convince them.
I take personal satisfaction in working on something that has been elusive for so long and appearing to make some progress. And I take some pride at being able to nudge along, however so little, our understanding of these archetypal properties of the human mind. The excitement to me is that for the first time we seem to be on the threshold of demonstrating that property in a coldly scientific format, and thereby the barrier between science and spirit that was artificially erected some century or two ago must crumble and come down. One should be able to do research on spirit.